Hey everyone, it's Soul here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. We have a lot to discuss for today's video because I have never in my entire life felt this conflicted about a game before. Today we are going to discuss Life is Strange. I have gone from feeling pretty positive after playing through the game and having this overall good experience playing through it, to all of a sudden finding more missing pieces, finding more clues and parts of the story that I had initially missed, and the further I researched it, the further I've looked into it, the more and more disappointed I have gotten in the game as a whole. I also just feel very torn because I do understand the general appeal that this game offers. The positive attributes that many fans praise, I definitely saw it and experienced it for myself, but the story itself has so many things wrong with it that I can't bring myself to say that it is a great game. I really wish that I could say that I absolutely love this game, but ultimately, I kind of find it to be a bit overrated. So let's just break it all down and discuss this. As always with these longer videos, there will be timestamps, so feel free to jump around. Please remember to hit that like button, click subscribe to see more videos from me, and leave a comment down below. Here is your one and only warning, that this video contains spoilers. Alright, grab your cameras and let's spiral into it. Life is Strange is an episodic adventure game that was released back in 2015. With a heavy emphasis on the narrative aspect, this game plays into the butterfly effect category of storytelling games, with a constant reminder that every single decision you make will change the outcome of your story. It was created by Don't Nod Entertainment and published by Square Enix, and with this game becoming so successful, Don't Nod Entertainment quickly rose to success and have since gone on to put out both a sequel and a prequel for this game, and I also believe that there is a fourth game in the works for this series. I had always heard good things about this game, so I was really excited to finally be playing it, but for those of you that don't know what actually happens in it, well, in Life is Strange, you play as a girl by the name of Max Caulfield who has just turned 18. We start off with her waking up in this terrifying tornado as she watches it approach the town from the lighthouse on the cliff before she suddenly wakes up in her class at school. After living in Seattle for the last 5 years, Max has returned to her hometown of Arcadia Bay to study photography at Blackwell Academy. While in school there, she sees a girl get shot in the bathroom, and as she reaches out, she suddenly realizes that she has the power to rewind time. After saving this mysterious blue-haired girl, it is eventually revealed to be her childhood best friend, Chloe Price. The two girls are tossed together after Max is confronted and threatened by the town's local rich kid, Nathan Prescott, who is the guy that also shot Chloe earlier in the previous timeline. The two friends go on to talk about why Chloe is in trouble with Nathan before Max has yet another vision of the tornado and finds out that the tornado is coming on Friday that week. It's not just some dream, it's a vision of the future. Telling Chloe of her powers, the two friends try to solve the problem of the upcoming tornado, they try to learn more about Max's powers, and most importantly, they try to solve the mystery of Rachel Amber, who is Chloe's friend who has been missing for a while. Using her powers, Max goes on to help save her friend Kate from school, from jumping off of the roof after she's been constantly bullied for a video of her at one of the school's parties. Or, if you fail, you won't save Kate, which is totally not what happened to me at all. I definitely saved Kate on my first attempt. No! As you go on to play the game, Chloe and Max go on to bond as friends or perhaps something a little bit more, while the two girls run around town searching for clues and mainly follow clues leading to Chloe's stepfather as he is seen constantly doing things that are either suspicious, aggressive, or just not good. After a brief argument between the two friends, Max goes back in time all the way to save Chloe's dad, who had passed away in a tragic car accident about 5 years ago. Having altered the timeline, Max now meets another version of Chloe who is paralyzed. But all of this is really pointless because we just end up going back and letting Chloe's dad die again in order to fix things and put things back to the way it was before. We eventually go on to track down Nathan's creepy dark room, and we find photos of Kate drugged and of Rachel Amber being drugged, killed, and then buried in the junkyard. After finding Rachel's body, the girls go on to confront Nathan about it at a party before they end up back at the junkyard, only for it to have all been revealed to be the photography teacher Mr. Jefferson all along. Chloe ends up getting shot and killed while Max is kidnapped, and then Max has to use her powers to find a way to not only escape Mr. Jefferson, but also how to fix the tornado that is still approaching the town. She is eventually given the tough choice of choosing to either save her best friend and let the tornado destroy the entire town, or to go back in time and let Chloe die in the bathroom, since that is the moment that started this chain reaction of the time-traveling events that eventually led to this tornado. Let me just start off by saying that I love the concept of this story. I really do love time travel stories in general, but they are notoriously difficult to write. And so going into this game, I did expect some amount of issues in relation to time travel, so I am a bit forgiving in letting some of these technicalities of Max's powers slide. Because, let's be honest, in most time travel shows, once Chloe died in any of these timelines, we should have kind of jumped back into that moment in the bathroom. The timeline should have fixed itself, and the sort of space-time continuum would have been resolved. There's also the issue of her power running out, which is a little bit frustrating, and you also have some of the orders of the timelines and events jumping back and forth in the final episode after you tear up the photo. Something about that doesn't really fit right. I don't really understand how Max ended up in the dark room instead of being perfectly safe at school, since the previous timeline that we corrected was David catching Mr. Jefferson, so it doesn't make much sense, but again, it's all just wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff, so let's just look past that for this discussion. My initial reaction after playing this game is that it was actually pretty good. I think I even said in my original playthrough that I was blown away by it, but looking back at it, while I did have a great time playing through the game, I do think that by that moment in the end, I was just a little bit overwhelmed because so much had happened and I was still processing the whole time travel jumping around of events that had just occurred. I also was shocked that it was only 2 endings, and I was just processing the extent of the emotional trauma that was happening to poor Max after having to kill her best friend or kill the entire town. That's a lot to take in. But once the dust settled, that's when my disappointment started to creep on in. Now, I do want to acknowledge that a portion of my disappointment in the game as a whole, and more so in the story and this ending, is definitely from the high expectations that I had for it. I always heard good things. I always heard that it was a great, artsy, and an insanely unique game. It was a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And every single time someone mentioned it to me in both the internet and in person, it was always in a positive manner. So I guess I kind of built up the idea that since it's getting such good praise, that it must be able to compete and withstand the test of time, like so many other stories and video games that were coming out around this time. Games like Until Dawn, Undertale, The Last of Us, all of these other great games that still hold up by today's standards. So when I finished playing it and there was still some bits of the story missing or lacking, I was and still am just a little bit disappointed in it. To be perfectly honest with you, the longer I've gone on to research and write this script, the more I wonder if the only reason Life is Strange became such a massive success was because of the general success of YouTube gaming at this time, in particular for branching storylines. People really wanted to see how different YouTubers reacted to the different situations, what options they would pick, would they be able to save Kate or not, could they successfully get Max out of there, could they kill Chloe, or would they sacrifice the town? And I'm not trying to say that this is the only reason that this game is successful, but I can't help but wonder if the game would have been as widely well received without it having reached much success in the YouTube Let's Plays. And listen, if you love this game, to each their own. I'm not trying to say that you need to stop loving it, because there are aspects to this game that I think are done really well, and I definitely see the appeal. But is it the best game ever? No, in my opinion, not at all. And it's not a good butterfly effect game story either, since there's ultimately only two endings. You let Chloe die, or you let Chloe live and kill the town. The characters themselves aren't super great, with hardly any of them having any sort of character growth or development at all. Their relationships are pretty stagnant. Then you also have the writing, which is both cringy and a bit sloppy much of the game, so you could not get me to play this game again at my own free will. The sequels and prequels, maybe I'll play them in the future, but I am in no rush to play them anytime soon. Now, before I go into detail and rip this story to shreds, let's talk about the things that this game does well. For starters, the game is undeniably beautiful. The art style, being this blend of realistic and yet almost hand-drawn, was pretty cool. Despite me poking fun at some of the pictures that were just a little bit cringy, that are supposed to be these award-winning photography masterpieces that kind of just look like a preteen girl's Instagram post, outside of those cringy photos, it is definitely a beautiful game. The art style definitely adds to the game as a whole, being immensely immersive as well. Many fans of the game seem to always state how this is an escape, and I can definitely see that, as the music and the beautiful setting create this great atmosphere and feeling to the game and the story. It's very easy to get captivated by this world and to drift off into the town of Arcadia Bay, even if it's just for a little bit of time. It did take me a little while to get into the relaxation aspect that this game has created, but once I got used to it, I absolutely loved the moments where you could sit and take everything in. It was not only relaxing for me as a player to just take a moment and calm down and relax while I was playing the game, but it was also a nice way to get an insight into Max's thoughts, and even created moments of added dialogue with Chloe in a very natural and subtle way. I also enjoyed the few puzzle elements that this game had created, with my personal favorite being the one where we could connect all of the information from all of the different documents that we had collected at that point in the game. I also want to acknowledge that this game does a great job addressing some really serious life issues. Obviously, the exact word choicing around these events could have been improved, but I do have to point out that this game was very progressive in bringing up serious discussions and being sort of a launching point for discussions surrounding mental health, bullying, and even queer representation at the time of its release. Mental health is clearly the main focus out of these three things, with Kate, who is basically this personification of mental health struggles, with the feelings of depression that she's gathered from the constant bullying. But you also have Chloe, who is quite clearly struggling with the death of her father, and she has not learned how to cope and work through that trauma. You also have the idea of Max, who is going through this crazy emotional week, only to suffer the loss of her best friend and potential girlfriend. This raises yet another topic discussing mental health, not to mention Nathan Prescott's ending reveal of him having mental health struggles as well, is yet another character that raises this topic in a different light. Going off of that, Max's character being pretty plain and almost a bit of a blank slate, I think it was actually pretty smart because it allows the player to project themselves onto her. I definitely think that in this slow-paced narrative game, this was the best and most impactful decision. It forces you to feel every single emotion tenfold, since you are feeling it as if you are Max. In extension, with the game covering these heavy topics and having Max as this blank slate, I think that a portion of people found a really strong connection to some of the characters, either connecting to Kate, Max, or Chloe, simply out of a shared experience. I would hope that it's not too many people that can relate to these characters in that degree, but it does seem to be one of the reoccurring comments from people in the fandom, and I absolutely love the fact that this game created either a talking point or a place of comfort and connection for anyone who could relate to those characters. Then last, but certainly not least, the final thing I want to praise, if you watched my playthrough you probably know what I'm about to say, but I felt like they did a great job at hiding Mr. Jefferson as the sort of big bad ultimate enemy. They timed the interaction with Victoria perfectly because it was right when I was starting to get suspicious of him and the principal. Right at the start of the third episode, I kind of felt like it can't just be Nathan, it has to be someone else. And so my mind was starting to search around, and right when I wanted to learn more about Mr. Jefferson, it was right after we could get him in trouble with the principal and after you could get the hint that maybe we should start looking into him. That's the moment that they decide to have Victoria start flirting with him. And I think because he did the right thing, he didn't flirt back, he wasn't creepy back, he did the right thing, the only thing to do, which is reject her, that caused me to take him out of my line of suspicion, and I thought that was really nicely done. However, while all of these things, this amazing atmosphere, the wonderful sound design, the potential connection for characters, the serious discussions, being able to hide Mr. Jefferson a little bit, and the beauty of this game, while that's enough to make it a great game for some people, it's not enough for me. You guys probably know by now that for me, it always comes down to the ultimate story and the character's growth. The story of Life is Strange as a whole, it had a lot of great things set up in the beginning, but as time went on, it seems like they didn't know where to go with it. I know this was released in episodes, but I don't actually know how the writing process worked, because while there are some things that seem to have been planned out from the beginning, like Mr. Jefferson being the ultimate enemy, other things seem a little less thought through and unpolished. I can't help but wonder, were they rushing through the writing in the last 2 episodes just because they had the deadline to meet? It just felt a bit too rushed and sloppy in the ending, which was overall disappointing. Now, one of the biggest issues that I have in the story is the lack of an overarching metaphor or lesson. Usually, in slower paced and almost always in emotionally driven stories, you want there to be an ending message, a lesson, or a metaphor so that your story has a point. You don't want the player and your characters to go on this emotional journey unless it is worth something. With Life is Strange, it's set up in a way that seems to be a lesson on friendship. We have this great intro with 2 friends who haven't spoken in 5 years suddenly being thrown together on this crazy intense week to try and solve the mystery of Rachel Amber and the mystery of the soon-to-come tornado. Their friendship and their relationship is the key focus of the story, with Max saving Chloe over and over again. We also have Chloe always reminding Max of her failures in those 5 years of no contact, and of course, their reunion is what starts this story. But at the end of the game, their friendship doesn't go anywhere. There is 0 progress in their friendship, and whether you pick to save or kill Chloe, whether you pick for them to become a couple or remain friends, their relationship does not progress at all. The closest that we get to Max and Chloe's relationship progressing is this argument right here. Chloe is blaming everyone for all of the bad things in her life. She is throwing Max into this mix of bad people that have ruined her life, stating that Max had abandoned her and left her for 5 whole years. I was really excited when this happened because I wanted them to talk things through. I wanted them to address the feelings of abandonment that Chloe clearly felt. I wanted to learn why Max didn't reach out. And most importantly, I wanted to see how they would get past it, because if they could get past it, maybe how they move forward in their relationship creates a message or definition of what it means to truly be a good friend. But then, with the traveling back in time, seeing the alternate reality of Chloe, saving Chloe's dad, then killing Chloe's dad again, and coming back to the present timeline the next morning, I was so frustrated that they were just back to normal, as if this huge argument never happened. This is probably the biggest plot hole or moment of frustration that I personally had with this entire game and story, because they ignore the potential progress in Max and Chloe's friendship and relationship that was just beginning to blossom. Without the girls solving this issue and conflict of the 5 years apart, and therefore growing together in a much deeper and more profound connection, I couldn't help but feel like, what was the entire point of this story? Max just gets one crazy week with her once best friend Chloe before she is killed. And that version of Chloe that gets killed never meets Max. Or, on the other hand, they kill the entire town and drive off together, still holding in their unresolved problems that they have with each other. So what is the lesson? What is the lesson if it isn't about friendship? Why is Max getting emotionally tortured for a whole week for no apparent reason? Is the lesson don't bully people? Don't judge a book by its cover? Don't do drugs? Like, I don't really know, and I don't think the game fully knows what its lesson and point is. I have expected this to be, and it was all a dream ending, and Max would just wake up in Seattle, and that it would be revealed that Chloe had maybe died 5 years ago with her father in that car accident, and perhaps Max was tortured with survivor's guilt, or just couldn't move on after losing her best friend. I thought it would be something a bit more of a lesson, something that we can learn from, or at least it would be a retrospective story on guilt or grief or loss or something. I wanted something to create a bigger purpose or message, and we kind of got nothing. And if you guys have any thoughts and feelings on this matter, I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts on what you think the entire point of the story is, because I am really struggling to find its purpose. While on the topic of friendship, most of the key relationships don't seem to have a strong plan either. The love triangle situation, or rather the potential partner's decision that you are given in this game, is also kind of pointless. Having Max kiss Chloe, I think that makes the most sense since we spend most of the game with Chloe. We hardly have any scenes with just Warren and Max. We simply don't get to know Warren too much at all. And I absolutely hate how the writers set up Warren's character, and how his potential moments of interaction are solely contained to the first 2 chapters. I don't know if this was just me or not, but in the beginning of the game, when we have the opportunities to speak with Warren, I was so eager to find the mysterious blue-haired girl, to solve the mystery of Rachel Amber, to continue down the path of investigation, that I just couldn't be bothered to talk to Warren. Like, a girl just got shot in the bathroom and you're worried about getting Warren's hard drive back? Like, why aren't you freaking out? Why aren't you tracking down the blue-haired girl? Where are your priorities, Max? I also think that this whole relationship decision is kind of where Max being a blank slate is a slight negative. Warren's flirting is so painfully obvious that I wanted to know who it is Max truly liked. I didn't want to blindly choose. I wanted a bit of insight from her because, in my opinion, neither one of these relationships made a lot of sense to me right away. Neither one of these jumped out, and neither one of them made any sense. Warren's flirting is so obvious that it kind of made me think, well, since she isn't flirting back, she clearly must not like him. And with Chloe, I found it just a little bit weird that they suddenly shift from being best friends, childhood best friends, to all of a sudden actually liking each other in a romantic way. I wanted to know, when did that switch happen? How long has Max liked Chloe like this? Did they like each other before those 5 years apart? Like, I just wanted a bit more context so that I knew anything about these connections and the potential for a relationship. Even if the insight was just Max likes both of them, you get to choose, I wanted something to make that connection to these characters a bit stronger, because I'm really not seeing the romantic chemistry at all. Also, whether you choose Chloe or Warren, both relationships end up feeling incomplete by the end of the game. Warren and Max hardly interact one-on-one outside of the cringy texting, so nothing really goes on to happen there outside of a kiss at the end of the game. If you get Chloe and Max to kiss earlier, their relationship also feels slightly unfinished and a bit stagnant. Yes, they kiss, but after that, nothing really happens. They act pretty much the same outside of Max maybe getting a little bit jealous of Rachel Amber, but then nothing else happens until the very end. They can go on to kiss, but it's only if you kill Chloe. You don't kiss if you kill the entire town, which I almost feel is a bit opposite, because keeping her alive, in my opinion, is the more tragically romantic choice. You're basically saying, I love you way too much to let you die, and I choose you over every single innocent person in this town. I love you so much that I am going to kill this town for you. I don't know why, but I feel like there should be a kiss there. Like, I feel like if you choose the romantic pathway and the relationship option with Chloe, I feel like a kiss before driving off down the road would have made just a bit more sense to me, but, that's just my opinion. And the way it stands right now, neither one of these relationships make much sense or feel complete and whole in their decisions. It also doesn't help that Chloe is not a likable character. Her constantly being rude to Max, constantly being overdramatic, making everything about her and her problems, And always making mistakes, causing more problems for Max, makes it really hard to like her, and it also makes it hard for us to want to root for her. We know why she's acting like this. We do understand the sort of trauma that has caused this, but it still makes it hard to support her as a character. Moving on to one of the more annoying things that I found, the writing was very, very cringy in its language. Now, to have one or two lines of not great dialogue or cringy writing, it's fine, it's normal, it does happen. But this really felt like an old man trying to write teenage girl drama. And while the general ideas or general issues of teen bullying and the commentary the writers are trying to make around that, like I said in the beginning, it's great that they're bringing it up, but the execution and the word choices was not so good. And to anyone saying that this is how teenage girls talk, I'm sorry, but you're kind of wrong about that. This is not how an 18-year-old girl talks. I genuinely feel like aging down the characters to 14 or even 16 years old would have made a whole world of a difference because people mature a lot from the ages of 15 to 18. I also feel 18 is when people, more so girls, since scientifically speaking, girls tend to mature a lot faster than boys do, they would have grown out of using this cringy way of speaking. It just feels like a very immature form of language for a game with characters that are essentially young adults. And I'm sorry, but this just got me so annoyed when I was playing the game. Geek and nerd are not the same thing. Emo and goth have their differences. Metalhead and punk also have differences. And I'm sorry, but what is this line? Do you even know what that means? All of these random terms that got thrown around, they really irked me when playing it, and it took me out of the immersive experience that this game had to offer. But again, aging down the characters 4 or even 2 years, I think would have helped this issue of cringy writing a lot. I also think aging the characters down would have also helped Chloe's character as well, since her being younger would account for her rude comments and her unresolved trauma just a bit more. The next issue that I had in relation to the story as a whole is some of the weird attempts at red herrings in this story. Now, in mystery stories, there are always red herrings, suspicious people who appear that they could have done it in this case being kidnapped and killed Rachel Amber, and these characters go on to distract you for a portion of the story from the real person who is responsible, and these distractions, these people are eventually revealed to be innocent. It's also why the first person that is suspected is usually, not always, but is usually not the killer. In this case, Nathan is somewhat of a red herring as he is suspected of killing Rachel and being the evil mastermind. And while he is revealed to be the one that did accidentally kill Rachel, he isn't actually the one doing this because it gets revealed to be Mr. Jefferson all along, using Nathan as a bit of a scapegoat. David is a true red herring since we spend a lot of time investigating him. But I do think that the amount of time that we as players got to spend with him and seeing him, the more players caught on to the fact that it's not going to be David, that he is not going to be the ending bad guy. Many playthroughs that I saw called out the guess that David means well, but is just going about it the wrong way and failing to portray that. His eventual character reveal while saving Max and expressing how horrible he feels about how he's treated Chloe, going on to state how much he cares for Chloe and Joyce. It was good, but it was not surprising. I do think that shortening up the time that we spent with David would have made it a bit more believable that he is the actual killer, instead of almost everyone catching on to the fact that he means well but is failing to portray that. Aside from Nathan and David, there are 2 other characters that had the potential to become red herrings, but ultimately the writers did not do that. Daniel and the janitor Samuel are both given these kind of creepy voices for no reason other than just to sound creepy and throw us off on our leads. With the janitor in particular, there are a few more mentions of his character that make it seem like he could be a potential creep. Things like having seen Rachel walking on campus, a woman's silk scarf being found in the janitor's room, and some questionable magazines as well. But he's never really processed as a full-on red herring. His mysteries are never explained or questioned to a full extent. And I know that there are a few lines from Max that go on to suggest that Samuel is maybe gay, which would account for the scarves and magazines. But seeing the girls go on to investigate Samuel more, to see them question him, pressure him, and follow the lead of suspicion all the way, and then reveal that he is just innocent and he is just hiding the fact that he's gay and he's in the closet. I think that could have made Samuel's character have a lot more of a purpose instead of just being a creepy voice. I also think that it would have added a much needed rise in tension and energy in the middle section of this game. There was a moment in the middle of the story that I was getting a bit bored because we didn't get any new developments in the investigation. Nothing was happening aside from the girls just bonding. And I was getting very concerned. Was this just going to be Nathan as the ending enemy? I knew it couldn't be David at that point. We had spent too much time with him, but he was still our number one suspect. And with no new development, I just started to get bored and almost disappointed in the story in the middle because nothing was happening in regards to the investigation. There was even a moment that I was saying, I wish Warren could join the girls to give us a change in pace because I do think the trio dynamic usually works good in adding energy into stories. Whether the energy would have been from creating drama around these sort of love triangle developments, or even just by having Warren there as a bit of comedic relief, I just wanted something else to happen in the middle because I was getting so bored. Speaking of red herrings and the characters, it is a shame that all of the main characters had no real growth or character arc. It's really only David that shows any growth at all. Nathan is not really showing character growth, but his true character is slowly revealed over time as we learn more and more about his poor mental stability and then him being used as a pawn by Mr. Jefferson. There's not really a true growth from Max aside from her maybe becoming just a little bit more confident and outspoken after hanging out with Chloe, and I think it's quite obvious that Chloe doesn't really learn anything. Then of course you have the other characters like Kate, Frank, and the principal, which they don't really go on to learn or grow either, and they don't really offer much outside of their respective scenes. The characters as a whole just feel a bit incomplete and not polished enough by the end of the story. Now the last thing that I want to talk about is the overall pacing of the game and how the time travel negatively affects it. Now, the definition of pacing in writing is the rhythm of the entire story and how fast or how slow that story is moving for the reader, or in this case, for the player. Usually, in well-paced games, they almost always have a high-energy moment towards the end. The big reveal, the big resolution, the sudden fight to the death, the fight to survive. Even if the character is not necessarily physically fighting, the timing of the key narrative events is done in a way to create a fast-moving story for the players. And Life is Strange tries to do this by obviously having the tornado hitting Arcadia Bay, and by having the whole Mr. Jefferson reveal combined with the looming threat to Max's life. But many times, and increasingly so by the end of the game, since we as players know that Max can rewind time, the game seems to move slower and slower, since we know that our actions are to some degree pointless. Every single time there was a sudden burst of energy in the story, it forced us to slow down and either talk to someone or walk around aimlessly. Right when we are rushing into town to go to Warren, to get the picture, to go back in time, we can't even run to the diner because the game is having us go around save people in the town. But again, we as players know that it doesn't matter if we save them or not because we're about to rewind time and change the past anyway to save them. That's the biggest issue. We don't have a true amount of stakes at the end of the game because you know you're just going back in time, and knowing that this is all kind of pointless made that section of the game feel much slower than it actually was, which caused the pacing to be very underwhelming in the end. Also, the only 2 times your powers fail you is from the drugs that Mr. Jefferson inject you with, and from overusing your powers before Kate's scene. So again, we as players don't really feel as nervous by the end, or anxious or high energy, since nothing has happened with our powers recently going down, and we know that yet again, we are just going back in time to fix it. The time travel caused the stakes for the game to be lowered. Therefore, the tension and the high energy pacing that is usually there at the end of stories and at the end of games is not there in this one. The game does try to make up for this feeling, however, by throwing us this nightmare scene to confuse us, and I have to give them a round of applause for realizing that there was a drop in tension due to the pacing slowing down. And while it was cool in the beginning, I think that it went on way too long and it sort of lost its impact. I also personally don't like how they skipped out on repeating this whole climbing up the mountain path before the tornado fully hits, because we saw it foreshadowed 2 times before, so why not finish it out at the end? It kind of feels like that was supposed to be our future. We're supposed to wake up in this spot on the trail right at the last leg of the climb up to the lighthouse, but when we wake up with Chloe, we're already past that spot. They didn't do that, and this is what I meant earlier on in the video, where it kind of feels like the last episode was a bit rushed. It doesn't feel like every single foreshadowed event was fully thought through, and things didn't line up, and the game as a whole just needed a little bit more work to tie up the story with a nice little bow. So I guess to sum things up, I did enjoy the experience of playing through the game, but I'm hesitant to say that I actually love the game as a whole. The story is severely lacking, and I do find the extreme hype and praise of it to be a bit overrated. I understand the appeal of the calming music, the picturesque graphics, and I do understand that some people are drawn to it since it does touch on very heavy and emotional topics, but the characters and their relationships never grow throughout the story. The writing is both cringy and sloppy through much of the game, which took me out of the atmospheric experience, and it doesn't help that Chloe is just so rude to Max most of the game. It's also really frustrating that it's a butterfly effect game with only 2 endings, which is really not many at all. I also feel like I've said the word pointless a lot in this video, and I guess that's my big word for this game. It feels pointless. What was the point of Max getting emotionally tortured for a week? What are we supposed to be taking away from this game? I want to like this game, but after way too much thought, I find it to be pretty overrated. I will not be playing this game again as I have no interest in replaying it, but the sequels and the prequels are something that I would be interested in seeing because I am curious to know if they will expand on Max's powers and how things work and how she even got them in the first place. If you guys made it this far into the video, leave a little camera emoji since this is a photography school after all. If you liked my discussion, please hit that like button down below and leave your thoughts in the comment section. While you're down there, click subscribe to see more videos from me, and turn on notifications if you want to be notified whenever I post a new video. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you future souls next time. Bye, guys!